I was messing around with the wall size on my computer screen when I heard the news anchor talk about a murder in Ocala. I glanced up at the TV and saw a shot of my wife, Sally, and my best friend, David, coming out of a motel. Sally had bailed on work to go shopping, and David was supposed to be in Gainesville on a job site. I was shocked what the hell was going on. All kinds of thoughts raced through my head, but I knew I couldn't accuse them without solid evidence. Man, this totally caught me off guard. My wife and I have been married for 14 years, and Dave and his wife have been our tight friends for 10. We all went into business together, starting an architectural service. We were all super close, me, Dave, Sally, and her husband David Forrester and Mary. We used to hang out together almost every month. I'm the one with the architecture degree, so I do all the designs. Sally takes care of the business side of things, and Dave is out in the field making sure everything runs smoothly. We were doing pretty good following my plan until about 4 years ago. I want to get a big award for designing a city hall for a nearby town. All of a sudden, we started getting inquiries from everywhere. We ended up growing our team 4 times over, and now I have 12 other architects working under me. We had just moved into a new building that we built ourselves. It was 7 stories tall, and our offices were on the top floor. Most of the building was rented out, and the rent covered the mortgage with a nice profit. So, we all chipped in money at the beginning. Sally put in 25%, I put in 50%, and Dave covered the rest. I was busting my butt working on a bunch of important designs and putting in crazy hours. I was way ahead of schedule and planning to slow down soon. But then that afternoon, I got totally caught off guard and didn't know what to make of it. I could tell that Sally and I were losing some of our passion over the past few years because of the long hours I was putting in. I would have bet everything I had on Sally's love and loyalty. So, me and my girlfriend didn't always see each other, but I thought it was fine. I remembered my buddy from college, George Shelton, was an associate manager at the TV station. I had my secretary give him a ring since he owed me some favors from way back. I asked him to hook me up with a DVD of the new show that afternoon. He said it was no problem and would have it dropped off at my office in an hour. I called Sally at 4 o'clock like I always do, no matter where we are or if we're apart. She sounded happy. So, Mary hit me up and said she bought a nice flank steak. She invited me and Dave over for dinner, so I gotta make sure I get home in time to fire up the grill. She mentioned dinner would be ready around 6:30 or 7. Shortly after that, the intercom buzzed and the receptionist told me there was a small package for Mr. John Nelson. The DVD was quickly brought to my office. I popped it in and after watching it 3 times, I was sure I saw what I was looking for. But then I noticed something new that I hadn't seen before. What was that all about? Before I even knew about the program, there was a clip of Dave and Sally kissing by room 116. They were in the background while the reporter was talking about the murder that happened earlier. Another shot showed the name of the motel, which I recognized. I had actually designed the remodel a few years ago. I knew Tom Noble, the owner of the Nobility Motel, so I called him and told him about all the commotion. I asked if he had surveillance footage of the area between rooms 115 and 118. He said. So, the cops got their hands on the video footage from the motel area and were stoked about how clear it was. I asked if he knew Dave, and he said they talked on the phone but never met in person. I mentioned I wanted to check out those photos, and he said I could see them whenever. He said he would leave instructions for the front desk to let me see whatever I wanted. I asked if I could see them in about 15 minutes, and he was like, "Hey, John, no problem, this. Hey, the DVDs from this afternoon are still in the player." I turned off my big computer where I ran all my CD programs. I let my secretary know I was leaving early and asked her to call security once everyone else had left the office. I checked the camera footage and saw both of their cars parked in front of 116. Dave got there first, grabbed the key from the office, and went into the room. Sally showed up a bit later and went straight in. There were other people walking around the area when suddenly a guy with a gun ran past 116. So I was walking around the building when suddenly the cops, both in uniform and undercover, came rushing past with their guns drawn. After that, it got quiet for a bit and I saw the TV crew setting up with the reporter talking while Sally and Dave were kissing at the door. I asked the cashier to make me a copy of the footage. I took the film to the spot where Sally and Dave showed up and asked the clerk if he knew them. He said, "Oh yeah, I do. They come here at least once a week, usually around lunchtime and leave in the morning. They're Mr. and Mrs., last name. Hey, Anderson, these guys have been at it since I started here, which will be 2 years next month. They're nice people." I thanked him, took the DVD, and headed home. I needed to figure out how to handle this situation. I didn't see any point in tipping off those two cheaters that I was onto them. I had to stay cool until I had a plan sorted out. It was still a tricky situation, and I needed some time to work it out. As I was planning, I couldn't help but think about my amazing wife. She's a year younger than me, about to turn 35 but looking like she's only 33. She's been hitting the gym 1 or 2 afternoons a week. Man, I had a feeling about what kind of workouts she was doing. How could I be so dumb? Were they screwing me over in other ways, like taking money from the business? I needed to do a secret audit of the books. Sally was in charge of that part of the business and I always trusted her completely. I needed to get her and Dave out of town and plan a forensic audit while they were away. Then it hit me, Sally and I were going to a 3-day meeting for the Southeastern Architects Association. We were planning to bring Dave and Mary with us. By the end of next week, we were even talking about it a few weeks ago. I needed to find someone I could trust because my usual secretary, Marge, was going on maternity leave starting Monday. I usually kept to myself and stayed in my own workspace with my assistant, but then I remembered the new girl who had been working with us for a while now. Marge was training her to take over while she was on leave. I had noticed that her work was really good, she was a standout. So, there's this super cute and smart kid, Marge, who told me she's a single mom to a 2.5-year-old daughter. She's taking college classes most nights and her name is Debbie Summers. The letters and notes I had her write for me were top-notch. When we first met, she asked if she could chat with me for a bit. She wanted to see if there was a chance the company could open a daycare in the building for single parents like her. She thinks it would really help them out. Having kids around would make a lot of the workers feel more relaxed. Debbie laid out her argument calmly and clearly, explaining all the perks for the companies in the building. She had a list of all the employees from the companies that wanted this kind of setup. She even figured out the cost of staffing and rent for the only available space. This girl knows what she's doing, I was impressed. I told her to keep working on her proposal and talked it over with Sally and Dave, and they both thought it was a great idea. Sally was supposed to meet up with all the tenants and figure out how to divide the costs for the project. I hadn't heard from Sally yet, so I needed to talk to Debbie. I knew I'd have lots of chances over the next month since she'd be popping in and out of my office daily. I couldn't stop thinking about Sally and what had gone down between us. I couldn't believe she was just pretending, considering how passionate she was in bed. She was usually all smiles, coming into my office several times a day to give me a sweet kiss and tell me sweet nothings. She was so into me, no one could act as well as her. And Dave, he talked about how much he valued his memories. I couldn't believe he would lie, no one else was so genuine and open about their love, yet still cheated. I knew I had to be amazing tonight, or one of them would catch on. Could I trick them all? I needed a cover story to hide behind. Maybe a headache would work. Actually, a headache is perfect. Don't mention it unless someone brings it up, then just take some aspirin. Dinner that evening went smoothly. Nothing new, just like all the other times we've been through together. I played the perfect host and loving husband on the outside, but inside I was seething. There were a couple of moments where I thought things might blow up. First, Mary brought up the murder at the fancy hotel in town. Sally looked nervous, Dave was as cool as a cucumber and asked if it was the same place we had worked at before. I confirmed it was. I watched Mary closely, she stayed quiet and composed. I had a feeling she knew about their affair and was keeping it to herself. Later on, after dinner, we all pitched in to clean up. Sally was washing something, Dave was drying, Mary was bringing dishes in from the patio where we ate, and I was right behind her with pots and pans. When we got inside, Sally and Dave were whispering. Mary asked, "Hey, where are you two sneaking off to after John and I pass out in our beds?" They chuckled. Sally said, "Well, that's the only time we can get some love, otherwise we're stuck in a rut and you don't give us any." I kept teasing old Dave. He's scared that Mary will find out and kick him to the curb. Everyone laughed about it, but Mary was like, "Don't worry, at least I know he's not bringing home some weird disease." Sally joked, "Yeah, I'd never catch anything from John," then she hugged and kissed me. Man, she was smooth. I just smiled and laughed with everyone else. After Mary and Dave took off, I looked at Sally and asked, "What's going on? Is there something I should know?" She just looked at me with those gorgeous brown eyes and said, "What do you mean?" I honestly have no idea, it was just a feeling I had. Everyone seems to be in the loop about something that I'm clueless about. Am I the only one? All I know is that I love you more than anything. You are my whole world, the reason I wake up in the morning. I'm ready to start a family with you. I don't have much time left before it's too late, and I know that you're the only one I want to have a baby with, my love. So, go ahead and lock up, I'll turn off the lights and meet you upstairs, sound good? I stood there, trying to figure out what to do. I thought about it for a while, and I was sure that I was making the right decision. But I believe she was being honest when she said she loved me. I just shrugged it off and went upstairs. I quietly entered our bedroom and saw her lying on the bed with her eyes closed. I shrugged again, undressed, and headed to the bathroom to shower and brush my teeth. When I came back, her eyes were open and she had a smile on her face. She stretched her arms out and said, "Come to me, my sweetheart. I need your love so I can sleep. I need you to make me feel good and loved." Her body was amazing, she was irresistible. I wanted her just as much as she wanted me. She said she needed me, so I got up and went to the bathroom. I felt really nauseous and had to fight the urge to puke up my dinner. I quickly knelt down by the toilet and threw up. Sally was there holding my head. I moved away and splashed cold water on my face. I couldn't even look at her. I went to my room, changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers, grabbed my keys and wallet from my pants. Sally kept asking me what was up, but I just stared at her, started crying, and rushed out of the house. I was driving aimlessly, not sure where I was going. I just kept driving. It was around 10 a.m. when I saw a familiar little cafe and decided to stop for a coffee to figure out my next move. My phone was ringing, but I ignored it. I turned it off and went into the cafe. It was pretty empty, so I sat at a booth. A waiter came over and I ordered a coffee. I sat there, sipping my hot coffee, thinking about how I had let my marriage slip away. Why didn't I see the signs? I had my head in my hands, eyes closed, trying to figure it out. So, I was trying to figure out what the hell happened in my life when I heard this soft voice saying, "Hey sailor, things can't be that bad." I looked up and there was Debbie from my office. I shook my head and said, "No, things are way worse. My life has been totally screwed over." She looked really worried and grabbed my hand, saying, "Boss, I'm a great listener. I'm heading home from night school and I've got some free time. Wanna talk about it?" I just stared at her and sighed, "Girl, my problems are way too heavy for you. Back in the day, I don't think there's anything you can tell me that I haven't already heard." My old man was a cop on the streets and he'd come home and spill all the details of his day in the worst parts of town. My sister is addicted to love and has a drinking problem, while her husband is into drugs. I've seen it all. I looked at her and said sorry, but maybe my issues just hit harder for me. I don't know what to do, boss. Mr. John, talk to me about it. Sometimes just getting it off your chest can help. Hey girl, let me break it down for you. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with my partner and best friend. They don't know that I know. My wife invited her lover and his wife over for dinner tonight. It was hard to keep my cool, but I don't have solid proof yet. I saw them acting all lovey-dovey this afternoon after dinner. She then tried to act all lovey-dovey with me, and I lost it. I ran and puked, then I just left the house. It's a messed up situation. What really gets me is how often she says she loves me. I want to believe her, but it's hard. I can't believe it. She's still holding my hand in her tiny hands. She mentioned you were chatting about Miss Sally and Mr. Dave, right? Yes, your wife is absolutely gorgeous and classy. She always looks perfect. I don't trust Mr. Dave, he always seems to be checking me out with his eyes. He's never said anything, but I think your wife might have a similar problem as my sister. She loved her husband but she cheated on him almost every day. She just couldn't help herself. Yo, this chick used to roll with any dude who approached her. If no one did, she'd go up to them and ask what's up. Turns out, her husband left her and things got worse. She's now dying from AIDS. Her kids are with their dad. Man, I still care for her. The two kinds of people I hate the most are cheaters and liars. How can I ever trust her again? How can I be with her? What should I do, Mr. John? I think people can change, maybe with some therapy for both of you. I looked at this beautiful young woman. Hey girl, do you really think Mr. John has too many secrets for me to figure out? Does she really like him? How did this whole thing start? Does she want it to end? Who does she like the most? How long have they been at it? Why isn't she calling it quits? There's so much we need to dig into. I think the sooner you get all the info, the better. Is there a pattern to when they hang out? How do they talk to each other? I suggest you get a full report on everything about her. Yo, so this young girl was hella surprised by all the calls I've been making on my cell phone in the past few months. She's pretty smart, I gotta give her that. I decided to trust her 'cause she already knew everything I told her. I offered to pay her to help me get some info I needed, but she just laughed and said she'd help me out for free. She's not in it for the money, apparently. Cool, friend. Just call me John outside of work, though. We gotta keep up appearances, you know. Anyway, I want you to find me a private investigator and a forensic accountant. We're all supposed to be at a meeting in Atlanta on Friday and then head back. Yo, on Monday money don't matter. I'll hook you up with a company credit card to cover all expenses. I think they have their meetings on either Tuesdays or Fridays when she's supposed to be at the gym. I'll give you the name of the gym and I know exactly where they meet and which room they use. The owner of the motel is one of my clients. I think we need some hidden cameras to catch Miss Summers in action. So, is that enough info for you to get started? She smiled and said her name is Debbie John. I might need you to chip in for a babysitter so I can handle some of this. Just put it on the card, you cool with that? You can take out up to $300 in cash from any ATM, but there might be a fee. The total amount on the card is $10,000. I'll give you the PIN when I give you the card. I covered her hand with my other hand. I promise I won't forget what you've done for me. You're a great friend. I always take care of my buddies, always have. I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't know many of the company's employees or their loyalties. I'm not sure why, but I trust you completely, Mr. John. I really appreciate this, it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Man, I just had to get this off my chest. I sat back in the booth, looking at this woman or kid. She was such an interesting person. I smiled at her and told her that I think the issues with my wife are probably my fault. I haven't been giving her enough attention. It's not like she's always complaining about me being too busy with work, because she's just as focused on her stuff as I am. I need more info to figure out if this can be fixed. I smiled. Debbie, you were spot on. You're such a good listener and way smarter than your age. Now, tell me something about yourself, Mr. John. Like I said before, my dad was a cop. He got shot by some guy who just came to tell him his gas cap was loose and hanging by a plastic cable. He didn't make it, and me and my mom were there holding his hands when he passed. After that, we moved in with my Uncle William Denton. He's got a big house and never got married. I was about 15 at the time. We were pretty happy there, but Uncle William was real strict with me and my sister, Nancy. She was 2 years older than him and did whatever she wanted, didn't care what he said. Eventually, he gave her an ultimatum, either listen to him or get out. She chose to leave and the next day he reported her as a missing child. The cops found her a few days later and brought her back home. She had been gone for 2 days. It took over a year before we saw her again. One night, she showed up at the door with her husband and baby. Uncle William took them in and they ended up staying for a few years in the guest cottage out back. In the meantime, I had graduated from high school. So, that summer I was the top student in my class and even gave the valedictorian speech. I landed a job at a department store and quickly moved up to assistant manager of the shoe department for ladies. Just 2 months later, the manager bounced because her husband got transferred, so I was put in charge until they found a replacement. But guess what? They never did replace me and ended up promoting me to manager when I turned 18. I was killing it at my job and everyone was stoked with my work. Then, at a Christmas party for the company, someone slipped something in my drink and assaulted me. I had no clue who did it or how many were involved. Okay, so basically, when I found out I was pregnant, I got kicked out. My uncle wanted me to have an abortion, but I said no, so I left home. I had my baby girl and I love her so much. It's crazy, I had saved most of my money from working at the department store and had a good amount in savings. I moved in with an older woman who had a baby and took care of her while she worked. I stayed with her until her husband came back from the army. By then, Dolly was born and I found a small place to live. I live in an apartment right now. When I go to work, I drop my kid off at a daycare down the street. Luckily, my neighbor is nice enough to watch Dolly while I go to class, like tonight. That's pretty much it. I looked at her and gave her a pat on her small, warm hand that was holding mine. Debbie, if you ever need anything, just let me know. What are you majoring in at college? I'm studying business administration at the moment. I haven't figured out what I want to do yet. Tuition is really expensive for me, and my savings are getting low. But I'll manage somehow. Hey, I've got a steady job, so listen up. I said to Debbie in my best old man voice, "Sweetie, I've got an offer for you." Debbie gave me a skeptical look and asked, "What's the deal?" I chuckled and said, "Just kidding. Here's the deal, I'll cover the rest of your schooling costs if you agree to work for me until you graduate. Your salary will depend on your grades for the 5 years after graduation." What kind of grading system are they using? 0 to 4. Hey, what's your GPA right now? I'm at a 3.5, but I barely have time to study. Trying to juggle work and childcare is draining my bank account. I only get to study when my kid naps or goes to bed, and even then I have to deal with housework. I'm pretty sure we'll go with your childcare idea, and I'll give you a little raise after your first 90 days with us. So, you're gonna get a 20% raise for every 10th of a point your GPA goes up. If you hit a 4.0 GPA, your salary will quadruple. That's crazy, right? Let's chat about some incentive ideas, I'm all for it. I won't let you down, John, I swear. Oh, and by the way, don't call me Mr. when we're not at work, or our deal is off. Got it? Cool, I gotcha, John. Alright, I'll let you head home now, gotta go. Good night. She smiled, then got all serious and a tear fell down her cheek. She leaned in and gave me a kiss on the cheek before taking off. I finished my coffee and rest of text cut off. I got up and saw her receipt. She had bought a cappuccino and a grilled cheese sandwich for $2.50. I paid for both receipts. The next morning, I heard heels coming down the hall to my office and saw Debbie standing at the door. "Good morning, boss," she said with a big smile on her face. She was so pretty and happy. "Good morning, Debbie, come in," I replied. She walked over to my desk, put 3 $1 bills on it, and smiled at me. I left early this morning and stopped at the cafe on my way to work. "Hey, remember that bill I forgot to pay last night? They told me no one paid their checks last night, so you must have paid mine." I laughed and said, "Yeah, I also got your check." "This is too much, it only cost $2.50. Did you also leave a tip?" I nodded and said, "Yeah, I think I did." I gave her the envelope and said, "Here's the credit card, the PIN is inside the envelope cover. I want you to start working on those special tasks we discussed yesterday. I'll let Marge know you're focusing on the child care project, so take all the time you need. Sound good?" "Hey, how are you doing?" she smiled as she took the envelope. "Sure thing, Mr. John. If I finish up before the end of the day, I'll let you know how I'm doing." I couldn't help but smile back at her. If you're free all day, you could check out some other daycare centers for comparison. Do you always go to the cafe in the evenings? That's usually my go-to for dinner, it's all I have time for. If I don't see you later, I'll try to catch up with you tonight. Then she went back to the office around noon and gave me an update. "Hey, check out these estimates for everything you wanted. Let me know if they're good for the audit. I need an answer by tomorrow evening to get everything ready for this weekend. I might have to stick around with them. Can Dolly come with me on the surveillance project?" I have everything ready to go. I need to call them using the info in the envelope. Should I check back in an hour? I told her I'd have the answers by then. Couldn't help but smile back at her. I buzzed Sally's buzzer and she answered right away. Hey honey, what's up? Not much, I guess. You didn't go out for lunch today? Nope, my dear. I'm too busy today and I'm planning to work out tomorrow at noon. I need to get the payroll done early because we're leaving for Atlanta on Friday. Have you talked to Dave and Mary? Yep. Do you feel better this morning? You were acting weird last night. I don't really understand what's going on with you. Don't worry about it, I feel a lot better. So, that girl, you know, the one with the daycare option, Debbie. Yeah, Debbie. She brought over some numbers from other daycare places. She's pretty smart, that one. And cute as a button. Should I be watching her while she's with you? Why are you suddenly worried? I'm way too old for her. She looks like a teenager. But if I was 20 years younger, then maybe you should be concerned. Man, she's pretty amazing. She's old enough to have a kid, and she hasn't even lost the baby weight yet. She showed me a picture of her daughter, who is just adorable. I'm so jealous, I want one too. We'll see. I need to start working on the baker project and have it ready by Friday. I might have to work late tonight to catch up, I'll keep you posted. Debbie got all the info and left work early to give it to the investigators. Later that afternoon, Dave stopped by my office. He was asked if he was ready to head to Atlanta for the weekend, and he said he was. He mentioned that Sally said you were feeling sick last night. Are you feeling better today? Yeah, Dave or Buddy, I must have caught something. I grinned at him and said, as if you could ever cheat on Sally, she'd kill you if she caught you. He chuckled and replied, maybe. What about if I caught her? I think he flinched a bit. Fat chance, mate. The girl adores you, she'd never cheat on you, I said. I looked at him closely and said, you might be right. I've heard that depending on the circumstances, any woman could. She's got a whole bunch of guys chasing after her, but she's yours. The conference went well and we had a blast. I called Debbie every day and she finally gave me all the info I needed on Sunday morning. She promised to have it on my desk by Monday morning. I was as nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs the whole time. I felt uncomfortable the whole trip, but luckily we had tons of activities day and night. We were exhausted by the time we went to bed. Hey, so Sally wasn't even fazed when we went straight to bed after the sheep show that went on till midnight. The next night, we finally landed and stumbled into our room around 2 a.m. After a quick breakfast meeting, we hit the road on Interstate 75 heading south. We each took turns driving for about an hour and a half before getting back home around 6 o'clock that evening. Mary and I were chilling in the back seat, and Sally and David probably thought we were knocked out. But I noticed Sally kept pushing David's hands away while she was driving. She glanced back at us while I was peeping out from under my baseball cap. I don't think she could see my eyes. I saw her signal to Dave, and as he turned back to look at us, I quickly shut my eyes. When I opened them again, he was sitting closer to Sally. She let out a few soft sighs, so I figured he was making her happy. I groaned and sat up, asking where we were. They both jumped, and Sally told me to go back to sleep. We had just arrived in Florida and were looking for a place to stop and rest while Dave took over driving. It hit me that my marriage was over, Sally and I. I didn't really talk much on the way from Dave and Mary's to our place. We did stop at the drive-thru at the burger joint in the neighborhood. When we got home, we unpacked our 8-hour-old burgers and hopped into bed. She cuddled up next to me and started dozing off. I tried to fall asleep for about an hour with no success. So, I got up and called Debbie's cell phone. She answered, sounding wide awake. I asked her how everything had gone so smoothly. She replied, things are pretty boring around here without you. Gone, but I think things are gonna go crazy tomorrow. Is it that bad, hon? I think so. Can you put everything in the middle drawer of my desk, please? It'll be there. Thanks. Good night. Good night. I'm so glad you're back. I agree, Monday mornings were the usual. I left for work way before Sally even got up. David would come 10 minutes after me. I thought about it, he couldn't just pop in to see Sally and leave so quickly. Sally's not the type to fall in love fast. I read the report by Atkinson. So, everything was going smooth at Jenkins Accountants, except for this one guy, Dave, who was using his expense accounts in the wrong way. It was just a couple $100 each month, and I wouldn't have cared if no one found out. But it was setting a bad example for everyone else. Then, I heard the sound of high heels coming down the hallway. Debbie peeked her head in my office. She was early. She smiled and things instantly got better. "Hey boss, how's it going today?" "I don't know yet, I haven't read the investigator's report." "Have you read it yet?" She looked away from me before looking back and nodding. "Is it really that bad, Deb?" She nodded again. Naturally, a tear rolled down her cheek. I sat down and grabbed the brown envelope from the drawer. I took out the report and skimmed through it quickly. My suspicions were confirmed. There was plenty of evidence. I grabbed the DVD and popped it in. The title showed the date and time of the footage. It was from Tuesday. The investigators were on it fast. The first thing I saw was Sally entering the motel room and kissing Dave. They were making out for a long time, then they stopped and started taking off their clothes. Sally was incredible as always. I saw him having sex with her, and I watched until I thought I was going to throw up. I fast-forwarded to the next scene. The next scene was from Thursday at 12:16 in the same room. Dave was waiting for her, and then Sally came in and said, "Dave, this is over. I think we got too careless. I think they both suspect something. We can't do this again." The video quality was decent, but it wasn't going to win any awards. Dave backed off. "I guess you were right. It's over. It's been a great 5 years, do you think we can have one final fling?" "Oh no, I'm off to the gym. Take care this weekend, don't mess things up now. I can't bear to lose my John, it would destroy me." "Yeah, I feel the same about Mary, I adore her." They kissed again and left the room. Dave left after dropping the room key on the table by the door. I looked at Debbie, tears streaming down my face. She quickly closed the door and came over to me, asking if I was okay, as they're both supposed to meet you here in 20 minutes. "Do you want me to delay it for a bit?" "No, just give me a minute to freshen up and I'll be good." "When is Mrs. Forrester expected to come?" "About 5 to 10 minutes after Miss Sal and Mr. Force. Can you keep them busy until then? Let me know when she arrives and then bring her in here. You stay here too, it wouldn't hurt to have a witness." "Do you have control over the hidden cameras in this room?" "Yes, the control is on my desk." "Great, turn it on when the first visitor comes in. The sooner we can get Mrs. Forrester in here, the better." "Okay, got it." "Hey Mr. Nelson, you'll be fine. Did you see the tissue boxes I put around the room?" She glanced at the clock. "Yeah, I need to take a break from my desk." She opened the door and looked outside, then turned to me and blew a kiss. "Stay strong, boss." The door closed behind her. 2 minutes later, the buzzer went off and I saw Dave holding the door for Sally. I pretended to be on the phone, motioning for them to sit down. I responded, "That's exactly what I was thinking, George. I'll call you back if needed." "Hey, whatever happens, I just want to wrap this up ASAP, you know. I'll keep you posted on what's going on." Oh, the beep went off again. Debbie mentioned that Mrs. Forrester is here, so let's bring her in. The door opened and Mary and Debbie sat down. I gave Mary a smile. "My gut feeling is that you should stick around too, 'cause whatever's going down today affects you, Sally, and Dave." Sally and Dave were staring at each other, no smiles. I scanned the room. "I'm sure you all know Miss Summers, she's covering for Marge as my temp secretary. She's pregnant and ready to jot down notes, so let's get going. Look at the TV screen over there." I pushed the button on my desk and the TV showed the scene where Sally met up with Dave at the motel. They stared at the TV in silence. Then Sally stood up and screamed, "No, no," before collapsing on the floor. Dave looked at me and said, "You jerk." Mary chimed in, calling him a jerk too. "Shut up, David. I want to hear this." After a few minutes of drama, I turned off the TV. "I think we've seen enough of that. Hey, Mary, you gotta watch this part 1 fast forwarded to where they finally stopped cheating on Mary and me. 5 years later, Sally was still crying on the floor. I told her to cut it out, it was too late for that. She should listen to me because it's about her future. She looked up at me, and I wanted to comfort her, but a voice in my head said to stay strong. I glanced around the room, then turned off the DVD after the two lovers professed their love for their spouses. I said to Sally, "See. Hey, check it out." Sally's face turned red when I said I love her forever. But I can't live with or trust her anymore, so I'm gonna serve her with divorce papers as soon as she leaves this office. I turned to Mary and said, "Sorry for dropping this bomb on you so suddenly, but I think you knew what was going on." Mary confirmed, "Yeah, I totally knew. I could smell Sally's perfume on Dave all the time and some of his stories just didn't add up. John, I forgive you. I've got a lawyer ready to go for this mess too." I glanced at Sally and then at Dave, and that's that. In my book, cheating on your spouse is like straight-up stealing. When we said our wedding vows, we promised to be faithful and give ourselves only to each other. Giving your body to someone else is basically robbing your partner. You can't be trusted, and I can't work with people I can't trust. Business partnerships are like marriages, they're all about trust. And I don't trust any of you anymore. I think it's time I buy you both out, but I'm not sure if I have the cash for it. Okay, so here's the deal: I can keep running the business until we get the funding sorted, or we could just sell the company and split the profits based on our shares. How about we take 10 days to think it over? I've looked at all the options, anyone wanna chime in? Mary said she's down, and David, you're out the money you put in is mine now. I'd rather just be a silent partner. David, you're fired and you've lost your house too. Mary gave Dave a death stare and then sat back down. I smiled at Mary, "Babe, it just makes things easier for me. I'll get the paperwork ready for that." I saw Sally raise her hand, so I nodded at her. She looked at me with sadness. "John, please let me keep my share too. I'll also be a silent partner, just send me my cut when you pay Mary. Mary, please forgive me. I never meant for this to happen. It's all because I'm a weak woman. I let go of the best men in the world. I have nothing left to live for, nothing. My life is over. I was so stupid, damn. So, I was dumb and told Sally she can keep the house because I couldn't stand living there. I'll grab my stuff once I find a new place to crash. I'll give her a call and leave a voicemail." Sally walked out the door and I overheard someone saying, "Mrs. Sally Nelson." Yeah, she got served, all right. I heard her heels clicking down the hall as I walked over to the window and stared off into space. Tears started pouring out of my eyes. I thought the pain I was feeling was the worst of the week, but then Debbie came over and tried to pull me away from the window. "She looks really worried, Mr. John. Are you okay?" She gently wiped my eyes with a tissue. I smiled and thanked her. I said, "It's hard to walk away from 14 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage. I need to start fresh, at least. I plan to keep running the firm." I was scared of losing it. She smiled, "I'm really happy for both of us. Now I can make sure you stick to your promise." I replied, "No, I would have kept my word to you somehow. I'm fine now. How's the child care project going, Debbie?" I was smiling and then suddenly all my worries disappeared. I've sorted out all the numbers. Plus, I know a retired nurse who would be keen to manage it for us. She says she knows other folks who'd be interested in working here, either part-time or full-time. I'm thinking of bringing her on board. You'll probably have to chat with her to see if she's a good fit. I looked at her and said, "No, Debbie, it's up to you to handle it if you think it's important. If she's the right person, send her over to Joan, the HR lady. By the way, do you still have any cash left on that credit card?" "Yeah, so like, over half of it is good for now. Use it to buy the stuff she needs to start up. If she needs any changes to the room, tell maintenance. Set up a meeting with all the department heads, including Miss Sally and Mr. Dave's assistants. Make it for just after lunch in the conference room." I told her, "Honey, I'm gonna dump a bunch of work on you. Can you handle it?" She said, "Yeah, I got this. I might need your help sometimes, but I won't bug you unless I really need to. So, yeah, just plan your stuff out. Hey, From now on, we're gonna have a quick morning meeting every day. Congrats, you're my new personal assistant. You'll have a good secretary to help you out. Give yourself a raise for your new role. Now, get to work, girl. You've got a lot on your plate now. She gave me a big smile and then suddenly hugged me, kissing me on the lips. She quickly pulled back, covering her face with her hands. Oops, sorry, got a little carried away there, she said. I just laughed and thanked her for the small kiss. Looks like I might have to promote her soon. Renee seemed pretty serious. I really hope I got the promotion because of more than just sucking up. Don't stress about it, sucking up is not and will never be in your job description. I gave you the promotion because I trust you to do a great job for me. I need your help to run this business, you'll be my right-hand person. Promoting Debbie was the smartest thing I did for the company, she was like a little whirlwind. I hardly ever had to deal with small problems because she saw that what I did was the backbone of the organization. Got it, everyone in the company is just here to help me with child care. The program was up and running in no time. About a week or two later, Debbie came into my office for our daily meeting. She looked sharp in a new gray business suit, very professional and businesslike. It suited her well. Good morning, boss, how are you today? She asked. My day just got a whole lot better now that my right-hand woman is here, I replied with a smile. Thanks, sir. You've made my day, she said. I want you to meet my new assistant, she added, leaning in. So I hit the button on my intercom and said, send her now, please. The door opened and this little girl walked in. Debbie brought her over to me and said, Dolly, I want you to meet my boss, Mr. John. Good morning, just like I taught you, honey. The little girl was so sweet as she curtsied and softly said, Good morning, Mr. John. I'm glad to meet you. I couldn't help but smile as I replied, Good morning, Miss Dolly. I'm glad to meet you. Are you happy with your new daycare here? Yeah, it's a blast riding the bus. There are other kids to play with and I like it because Mom can check on me a lot. I just met this girl and I think I'm in love, she's so cute and clever. I asked her if she's ever been to the zoo, but she just looked confused. I suggested taking her and her mom to the zoo on Sunday, and she asked her mom if they could go. I felt bad for putting them on the spot like that. Hey, sorry about not asking first. My bad, won't do it again. She smiled and said you're just really excited. I get it, you want to make her happy and show her new things. Yeah, we'd love to go. I'll pack us a picnic. Debbie, do you have a car? Nah, mine broke down and it's not worth fixing. I'm saving up to buy a place. I think you should have a company car as my assistant. I'll check into it. Yo, so after I took you and Miss Dolly out to lunch one afternoon, we had a blast at the zoo. Dolly was super pumped and wanted to check out everything, so I ended up carrying her most of the time. I had no clue how fun it could be to hang out with a kid. I also had a good time with her mom. The next day, I called up our transportation chief and found out we had a 2-year-old Honda Odyssey just sitting there. I told him to get it cleaned up inside and out, since it had our company logos on it. I gave him the order. Go park in the spot for my assistant and bring me the keys, he said. He didn't think we had a reserved parking space for it. I told him to change the sign in Mr. Dave's old spot. Later that afternoon, Debbie came by my work with Dolly. She said they were heading home. I pouted and pretended to cry. Dolly's eyes got big. Mr. JN is crying, Mama, she said. They asked what was wrong. I said Dolly didn't kiss me goodbye. Dolly ran to me with her arms out, wanting to be picked up. I picked her up. I picked up Missy and gave her a kiss before putting her down. Then I gave Debbie the car keys and she looked confused. Missy, you look so fancy in your new suit. We can't have you taking the bus and ruining our image. You have the keys to your company car, it's parked in your spot under the roof by the main door. Remember what I told you, if you don't have a car seat for Dolly, go get one now. Now get going. Debbie looked at me for a moment before leaving. She shook her head, grabbed her Dolly, and left. When I got in this morning, I saw the Honda minivan. Deb wasn't at her desk, so I started making coffee. I went in and turned on my computers. I heard her heels in the hallway, so I turned and saw her noticing the hot coffee on her desk. She looked at me, smiled beautifully, and walked into my office, closing the door behind her. She came up to me, looked up at me, reached up, pulled my face down, and kissed me with her arms around me. Her lips met mine and she pulled back a bit, asking why I'm so good to her. I told her she earns it every day, that the place is running smoothly thanks to her, with everyone smiling for the first time. Just being near her makes me happy. She looked into my eyes and asked if everything I said was true. I reassured her that I don't lie, I tell it like it is. Then she asked for my help, saying she hasn't been able to figure it out. Hey, I finally splurged on some good steaks yesterday. I also got a charcoal grill and some charcoal. I've never grilled before, can you come over tonight and show me how? Sure thing, I'd be happy to. I have to admit, I have another reason for inviting you over. Really? Yeah, my daughter has been bugging me all week to have you over for dinner. She really likes you, and she usually doesn't like guys. She thinks you're great. I agree with her on that, you're pretty awesome. Hey, I can't deal with this minivan, don't you like it? We love it, but it's just too much. The vehicle is 2 years old and has been sitting for almost a year. It's really cheap to run, you'll need it for company errands. Do I have to go out and find you something better? Nah, nothing could make me happier. It's got everything, loaded with extras, it's perfect but just too much. We do have a 10-year-old pickup truck you could use to haul stuff. And your secretary can use the Honda as planned. Hey John, do you think you can manipulate me like a puppet? Nah, not really. You convinced me to go to daycare the first time we met. You're pretty good at getting me to do things. Sorry if I seem like I'm trying to please you, I don't mean to. Please don't be mad at me. That's why I hired you to push me to do stuff I don't like. That's what a good assistant does. You keep me on track for meetings, make sure I get to appointments on time and prepared. You even send a card to each employee for their birthday, anniversary, or other special occasion. Every day, people come up to me and thank me. I need you to do the cards to keep you happy, but I don't handle payroll, that's the girl's job. She's full of crap, you suggested to her that it would boost morale. She told me all about it. You only tell me what to do, but you ask everyone else to do stuff. You recommend they do something, but with me, you just tell me what to do. She giggled, it works, right? What time should I come over for dinner tonight? Actually, I need to know what time you want to eat. Why don't you go home, change, and come right over? I forgot. Hey, just wanted to let you know that the grill is still in the box in the van. It was too heavy for me to carry in on my own. I'll be there as soon as I can, okay? No school tonight, they don't have it on Friday nights because no one would show up. The two lovely ladies really enjoyed the steaks, baked potatoes, and corn on the cob that we cooked on the barbecue. After dinner, we played cards and they totally destroyed me at Go Fish. I took them to Dairy Queen for dessert and we had a great time, although we got a bit messy in the car. I helped Deb get Dolly ready for bed. Deborah and I had a good time. I was just chilling, sipping on this cool wine I picked up from a local spot. Eventually, I realized it was time to head home. I asked if we could catch up tomorrow, but Deb just stared at me without saying anything. After waiting a bit, I said, all right, I guess y'all are busy. I'll see you at work, John. Then she hit me with, I need to talk to you, which freaked me out because I thought I was being too pushy. I assured her that I was all ears, but she told me, I know you always hear me out, but you're not really getting my messages. What's going on, John? I think I need to free you from your promise to me. I think I need to find a new job, my heart has stopped racing. Why did I think you actually liked your job? What's up? I owe you so much that I can never repay you. I really don't know what to do. You don't owe me anything, nothing. I got way more from you than I ever gave. How is that possible? I haven't given you anything. Yes, you did. The time I've spent with you and Dolly has been the best of my life. Your kindness towards an old man saved my life. You're the best. Debbie, you're the sweetest girl I've ever met. If I wasn't so old, I'd chase after you with all my strength. Honestly, I shouldn't have said that. I guess you were right, you need a guy your own age. She looked at me, confused. Wait, are you saying because you're old, you won't chase after me? Are you saying you love me? Yes, I'm sorry. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but yeah, I do love you with all my heart. I watched her closely as I poured. So there I was, just minding my own business, when she walks in with that gorgeous smile on her face. She jumps into my lap and plants a passionate kiss on me. Then she pulls away and starts showering me with kisses all over my face. John, honey, I love you too, she says. Dolly cares about you deeply. I want you tonight. I want to wake up next to you in the morning. I'm not exactly sure how to please you, so you'll have to show me the ropes when it comes to love. And then it hit me, I had this dumb grin plastered on my face the whole time. She leans in for another kiss and whispers, John, I may not know much about love, but I do know that you're the most handsome man I've ever laid eyes on. I fell for you the moment I started working for you. She touched my cheek and talked sweetly to me. She said she's always meeting and chatting with young guys at school who act like little kids, only caring about themselves and being superficial. But you're different, and that's what I love about you. I kissed her, shutting her up with a long, sweet kiss. I picked her up and took her to her bedroom. She kissed me gently and affectionately. John, cuddling like this, when we're finished, is almost as good as loving. I love this relaxed, satisfied feeling of being completely filled with your love, she giggled. I hope you can dance as well on your feet as you do lying on your back. Dance, sweetie, dance. I love to dance. My mama and uncle were great dancers. I even taught dance at Arthur Murray Studio in my last 3 years of high school. As a girl, I dreamed of marrying a tall, strong, handsome man who would dance with me into the sunset on our honeymoon. Well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Having a foursome isn't that bad, your skills in bed make up for the lack of dancing. I don't really care about dancing, but I adore your love. I can't imagine living without it. I made a plan on Monday to make sure I have enough time to sort out our marriage license, blood tests, honeymoon, and where we'll live, among other things. Eureka. I would just let this little powerhouse loose on the problems and they would be solved in no time. I looked down at her and... Hey, that girl with the pretty smile and gorgeous blue eyes greeted me with a grin. She said, I saw you struggling, I know you figured it out. Need a hand? I told her what was on my mind and she just smiled, saying, no worries, I got everything in my desk. Go back to sleep. I tried to sleep but my problems kept bothering me. I looked at my partner snuggled up next to me, and she grinned as I opened my eyes. I love you so much, she said. There's nothing we can't handle in a few minutes. What matters most is us. I never want to sleep without you ever again, for real. Do you have space for Dolly and me? Where you staying at? Yeah, I got 3 bedrooms, but right now it's just 2.5 bathrooms. We can help you move in today. She snuggled up to me, reached up and touched my face, then pulled me in for a quick kiss on the cheek. Looks like one problem is already solved. I gotta use the bathroom and brush my teeth before I can give you a proper kiss. All right, do your thing, I said. She came back with a towel wrapped around her, grinning as she hurried from the bedroom to the living room. Hey, I'll be right back in a sec, got a little notebook. She slept with me in bed. She starts flipping through it and shows me a page titled, Marriage Info. It had addresses, phone numbers, and hours for places like the clerk's office, notary, and our building. There was even a section for me to decide on banking, credit cards, car titles, insurance, and house ownership. I looked at her in shock and asked how long she's been planning this. She just giggled and said ever since she met me, she's been on it. After you passed out last night, I couldn't sleep. I was tossing and turning, my mind racing. I got up and worked on stuff for an hour, but then I remembered you were in bed and felt like I had to come join you. I have to fight the urge to touch you all the time, but I can't resist giving into your desires. I love that too. Everything went smoothly. We tied the knot in my office on Monday afternoon with just Debbie and Dolly, a few witnesses, the notary, and me. Dolly was thrilled and couldn't contain her excitement. She wanted me to hold her all the time. Debbie had the same idea as Dolly. I had one arm around me and Debbie had the other, and I was feeling really happy. Both of us were excited about our new place, even though it was a bit further from work. Debbie found this guy Jeff who was gonna be taking on a lot of her work, and he was a total hunk. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but I didn't say anything. The next day, I noticed that Debbie was spending a lot of time with Jeff. I just hung out in the office chatting with Joe and the boss, and I also checked out the other girls. I saw this girl I didn't know over there. She was super cute and young. I asked Betty her name and told her what I needed. Betty smiled and said she knew exactly what I wanted. She'll come to your office in the morning to take notes. I went to the drafting department to look at some new big drawings of the walls for a new building I was working on. When I got back to my office, Debbie was showing Jeff how to use the intercom. It was almost time to close and I was with Dolly. Hey, Debbie. Dolly and I are ready to go. We'll be waiting in the lobby. Oh, wait for me, honey. I just finished up. She quickly grabbed her jacket. She looked amazing in the cute outfit she had on. She had lost a lot of weight and was looking fantastic. She only had 3 really nice pieces of clothing, but she mixed and matched them to make 9 different outfits, including shirts, sweaters, and accessories. I gave her some more clothes. I thought Debbie needed a real shopping trip with Dolly and me. Deb grabbed my arm and we bolted. Where are we heading? She asked. I told her she'd soon see when I stopped in front of this huge fancy department store. She looked at me amazed. We put Dolly in her stroller. She's a bit chunky to carry around a store, and if you put her down, you gotta keep an eye on her every second. We made our way to the women's clothes section and were greeted by a young woman named Jane, a shopping assistant. She asked if she could help us, and I told her, sure. So, my new wife needs a whole new wardrobe, like work clothes, casual stuff, and sexy lingerie. I gave her a list with all that plus cocktail dresses, fancy gowns, shoes, purses, and accessories. I showed the salesgirl $5,000 and she smirked at me. She asked how much time we had before the store closed, and said we could come back in the morning if needed. Then Debbie stepped up, put her hands on her hips, looked up at me, and said, "Don't I get a say in this? Hey, you definitely got this. You pick out what you want or need, and I'll let you know if I approve. Your choice is final, but you're getting a whole new wardrobe. Doll's turn is tomorrow." The assistant checked out. Like, where did you find a guy like that? Wow, I'm so lucky, I know it. My daughter and I would love him even if he was a poor homeless man who needed my help. The girl laughed and said, "This is a much better option, trust me. It'll be easy with your figure. Let's start with lingerie and figure out your sizes. I think we'll find some nice business suits and dresses, then pick out shoes and accessories to go with them. We'll do the same with the rest of the stuff and keep track of how much we spend." Debbie and the girl took off running. 2 hours later, I was still there, holding a sleeping doll and wondering what I had gotten myself into. I must have dozed off because I woke up to Debbie giving me a kiss and saying we should call it a day for now and meet up again tomorrow afternoon. Just wait until you see all the cool stuff I have. And I got it for a steal. We spent $2,500 on 6 suits, 6 dresses, shoes, shirts, sweaters, and accessories. When we got back to my place, we were dead tired from lugging boxes into her walk-in closet. The closet next door was pretty much empty, even though it could have held all her stuff. She started unpacking and I told her I'd help if she told me where to put things. I opened the boxes and laid everything out on the bed while Deb sorted through them. She was moving much slower than me, so I ended up finishing first and went to grab something from the freezer. So, I looked to see what we could have for dinner and there wasn't much. I asked her if she preferred Chinese or Italian. Deb said they really like Chinese food. I found a menu for a local Chinese restaurant and we decided on a combo dish for 2. I told the person taking my order to pick out their best sellers. The girl thought it was smart to order that way so we'd get the tastiest dishes. The food was really good. Dolly liked the fortune cookies. She only had a bit of one cookie, but she opened them all. She asked us to read the fortunes to her, and she was totally into it. After she polished off the last cookie, she handed me a note and said, "Read it, Daddy." Read it. I checked it out carefully. It said, "You're one lucky girl. Your dad will take you shopping for new clothes tomorrow. Be good and you'll get some extra treats." Her eyes lit up. Is this really for me? I wondered. It couldn't be for me. I glanced at Debbie. Do you have a dad who's gonna buy you some dresses? No, you're not my dad, she replied. We already knew that. Buy me some more clothes for Dolly tomorrow. Our shopping trip went well and both girls got a lot of stuff. When we got home and put everything away, Debbie showed me a website she liked, Victoria's Secret. She still had some money left over from shopping in town, so I told her to grab some summer clothes. I promised her that if I finished some tasks, we could go on a week-long honeymoon in the islands. I let her spend an extra $11,000 because I knew she was going to look fabulous. She looked so cute in those outfits she modeled for me, and she looked amazing in everything she wore. One outfit looked like it was painted on her body, and I knew she'd have trouble dancing in it because of how tight it was. But she was so happy with everything, I knew it was worth the money. A happy bride is a beautiful bride. Deborah was thrilled, and I knew I would benefit from that. After she fell asleep in bed, I brought Dolly into my lap. So, we were kissing and then I was like, "Hey babe, maybe you should give your mom a call and fill her in on us." She thought about it for a bit. I've been thinking about it for a while now. I still care about them, and I think they might know where I've been up until recently. Should I just do it now? It's been over 3 years since I left. I think you should have a chat with your mom and update her on how you're doing. Maybe you guys should patch things up. I'm pretty sure they just wanted what was best for you. They didn't think she was going through such a tough time. My daughter, who is strong and capable, had tears streaming down her cheeks. Is that really how you see me? Just a glimpse of how I see you. I didn't even mention beautiful, charming, intelligent, and determined, among other things. Deb got up, grabbed a cell phone, and called a number. She listened and then said, "Hi Mom, it's me, Debbie. How are you and Uncle Bill?" She grinned as she told her mom that she missed them both. She explained that she had a daughter named after her grandma and that she had recently gotten married to the best. "Hey babe, my wife just got off the phone with her family and she was over the moon. She came running to me crying tears of joy, jumped into my lap and gave me a big kiss. She said I was fantastic and she's so happy I convinced her to do whatever it was. Her mom and Uncle Bill are thrilled too and want us to visit them soon. They live in a small town called Melrose, Florida, less than an hour away. So, looks like we're heading there on Sunday. Hey, did you see that?" Deb smiled. "I'll give them a call in the morning, sound good?" I nodded. Then Debbie said she was gonna tuck Dolly in and I could come in a bit to say goodbye. As I got closer to Dolly's room, I overheard them praying together. They were asking God to bless their family and keep them safe. Dolly said, "Daddy," and Debbie replied, "Yes, sweetie, we love Daddy the most." I walked in and we all hugged each other. I picked up Dolly and gave her a big hug. I gave her a kiss, she kissed and hugged me back. I told her I loved her and to sleep well. Tears were rolling down my face when she said she loved her mom and dad as much as she could. She was so sweet, I loved both of my girls. I hoped we would have another one soon. I was making breakfast when Debbie called her mom. She said we were meeting on Sunday and I smiled big. She didn't say much more, so I didn't ask. We went shopping on Saturday afternoon, it was time to get going. I had to find cute outfits for my daughters to wear when we went to Grandma's house. After some arguing, they finally agreed on almost the same clothes. They both wore denim skirts, black turtleneck sweaters, and denim jackets. Dolly added black tights and little black boots, while her mom rocked black tights and tall black-heeled boots. They both topped off their outfits with bright red ball caps, showing off their golden hair in ponytails. They looked adorable together. Deb looked fantastic in a more laid-back, country style. As for me, I'm just wearing trousers and a light blue shirt. Debbie took me to this huge old house in a navy blue blazer and sneakers. When we stopped under the porch, the door opened and this sweet old lady followed by an older man greeted Deb warmly. Debbie and her mom hugged and cried together. I took Dolly out of her car seat, held her hand, and walked up to the old man. I shook his hand and said, "You must be Uncle William." "I'm John Nelson." He shook my hand firmly and said, "You're right, Mr. Nelson." He smiled big and said, "This must be Dolly, my niece." I replied, "Yes, sir, this is our little girl. Hey there, Dolly. Come say hi to Uncle William." The old guy got down on one knee and reached out to Dolly. She smiled and gave a little curtsy. "Nice to meet you, sir." Tears were rolling down the old man's face. "I'm so happy to meet you, Dolly." Can I pick you up and introduce you to your grandma? Dolly looked at me, I gave her the okay, and she said it was cool. He scooped her up and said, "Sis, I've got someone here who wants to meet her granddaughter. Her name is familiar, she's named after our mom, the old lady." I turned around and gave the kid a big wide-eyed look, her hands went up to her face. Oh my God, she's so cute. She reached out her arms, twirled around, and reached for me. Dolly cried out, "No, I want my daddy." I quickly went over to pick her up, cuddle her, and comfort her. Debbie and her mom looked shocked. I hugged Dolly and asked her a question. She whispered the answer in my ear. I took a few steps back and talked quietly to Dolly, explaining how I felt about the situation. She nodded and said, "Yes, Daddy, I'll do it." I picked her up and carried her back. I saw Dolly looking scared of Debbie's mom. Debbie would always get emotional and cry when talking about her mom. Dolly doesn't get why she's scared of Debbie's mom. I asked Debbie if she's scared of her mom, but she shook her head and said no, she loves her mom. I hugged Dolly tight and told her I love her and would never let anyone hurt her. Debbie's mom cried because she loves and misses her mom a lot. There was a misunderstanding. She couldn't come back home because the problem was fixed. Now you can hug your grandma, wouldn't that be fun? She seems like a nice lady. Your mom is so happy to meet her, isn't she? Dolly looked at me and asked if I would be next to her. I said yes, I'll be right here with you. Okay. I smiled at Deb's mom and brought Dolly over to her. Mrs. Summers gently put her hands on Dolly's face and said, "I love you, Dolly." My mom's name was also Dolly. Dolly looked at Debbie and asked if she knew her mom's name was also Dolly. I loved my grandma so much, and I wanted my baby to be named Dolly. I looked at my grandma and asked if she was going to hurt my mom again. Mrs. Summers shook her head and said no, never again, sweetheart. Dolly looked at me, I nodded, and she turned back to Mrs. Summers and told her she could kiss her. I stepped back as the mom, grandma, and group became friends. We all moved into the house. Dolly sat on her grandma's lap looking happy. Debbie smiled at me lovingly, and I smiled back. Uncle Bill grinned and said, "Mr. Nelson, I know you. So, remember when we met that one time before? You suggested a new clubhouse for our country club a couple months back." We just shook hands and I told him I didn't remember him at all. I remembered the event, but not him. He mentioned that the team still had 3 more proposals to look at before deciding. He said my presentation was the best one so far. We had a nice meal, and Dolly and Mrs. Summers were already good pals. I started calling Uncle Bill just Bill, I really dig him. He confessed to pressuring Debbie. Having an abortion was the worst decision he ever made, man. I hope I never have a big fight with my wife like that. She's like a little pit bull, man, always ready to attack. She started working for me about 6 months ago and on her first day, she already had a daycare center set up and running in just 4 days. She's smart, focused, and dedicated, man. She's basically running the whole show now. Yeah, so she's my personal assistant, right? And let me tell you, this girl is small but mighty. She's basically revamped most of the departments in my organization, changing up the way things are done and boosting production like crazy. I had to let go of 2 department heads, and she just stepped in and took over like a boss. She handles all the office problems before they even get to me, and let me tell you, she's got a knack for organizing things like nobody else. My profits have gone up by 15% thanks to her efficiency. But the best part? Her smile lights up the whole office and makes everyone, including me, happy. She's a rare gem, that one. So, your niece, she's always looking so glum, right? Well, I don't even have to say it, I'm head over heels for her. And guess what? The feeling's mutual. I'm so happy for her. We used to get along great, until she got knocked up. She was dead set on keeping the baby, no matter what I said. I even offered to pay for the abortion, but the next day she was gone. She just up and left with only what she could carry on her back. We searched high and low for her for months, but she was nowhere to be found. If she's still around these parts, she must be doing some shady under-the-table work. We couldn't find Dolly for over a year because she never stayed in a hotel or motel or did anything that would leave her name on paper. Her sister was a mess, but Debbie was amazing. It was a great afternoon when Granny asked Dolly to stay with her for a day or two, but Deb and I thought she was too young. I didn't bring it up because I wasn't ready for that yet. Dolly only spent about half of her days at the new daycare, the rest of the time she was with Deb in her office or with me. Everyone at the office welcomed her with open arms. Debbie was a hands-on manager. So, this lady was going around to all the different offices every day, asking a ton of questions. Our team quickly figured out that saying, "I don't know," wasn't gonna cut it if you wanted to keep the boss happy. The right answer was always, "I'll find out." If you did that, you'd get a smile or a pat on the back. And if she was really pleased, she'd even give you a nice compliment. Everyone wanted to see her smile. Seeing her frown was just the worst. Then, one day, Debbie noticed the new secretary sitting at her old desk. She walked into my office. With a disgusted look on her face, she slammed the door and came up to me to ask about the new girl's progress. I told her it's going fine, but she doesn't kiss as good as you do. She looked at me with a tear rolling down her cheek. I quickly got up and hugged her, saying I was just joking. "I'll never find out if another girl kisses better than you. I'll give you and Dolly all my kisses for the rest of my life." Deb looked into my eyes and a smile appeared on her face. "Do you really mean it?" "Of course, all my kisses and hugs are yours." "Well, that could definitely change what you might have to tell me in the future." "No way, I'm never sharing." "You mean I can't even kiss our newborns?" "Okay, maybe in that case." But she grinned, "The little chick outside doesn't count as a newborn." We were both busting our asses to finish our projects before we take a week off for our honeymoon. I walked past Deb's office and peeked in to see her and Jeff standing at her desk, looking at some papers. He was kinda standing behind her and leaned back to get a better look. As she leaned over the desk, I saw him quickly lean in to see what she was pointing at. I went back to my desk and later that day, I was coming back from a visit to the daycare to see Dolly. I felt the urge to use the men's restroom, so I went in and sat in a stall. Suddenly, a group of guys came in and started talking. One of them said, "Yeah, she's got the smallest butt ever. She's getting more comfortable with me every day. That old guy can't keep that hot young thing satisfied." The other guy chimed in with his thoughts. "Man, you better be careful messing with the boss's wife. She pretty much runs the show here, even him. When she tells him to jump, he asks how high. Just be careful, man. If you had a wife like that, you'd be shook. Keep an eye on her. Oh, and she told me we're going out to different job sites in the next couple of days. That's my chance to make a move on her. She'll be mine. I never miss a day. I even hear them flushing the urinals." As I walked back to my office, I saw Debbie and Jeff laughing together. I sat at my desk for a bit before using the intercom to call Debbie in. 5 minutes later, she walked in with Jeff close behind. She greeted me with a smile and asked what I needed. I smiled back at her and then told Jeff to wait in Mrs. Nelson's office and to close the door behind him. I stood up, took Debbie into my arms, and kissed her passionately. "Hey," I glanced up and saw him watching as he slowly shut the door. She giggled and said, "I love it if that's all you want." But he replied, "No, I want you to fire Jeff." She was like, "What?" "He's doing fine. He's only been here a few weeks, still on probation." He said, "You don't have to give a reason." She was confused, "Why isn't that enough?" He said, "I asked you to do it." She was like, "That doesn't answer my question." He said, "Debbie, you're in charge of my business. I've given you complete freedom to run it. I've never questioned your decisions. I'm just making a request now." Debbie thought for a second before she left the room. I smirked because I knew she'd make the right call. A few hours later, when it was time to leave, I heard her high heels clacking on the floor. I glanced up and saw her big smile. She said, "Hey honey, ready to go home?" I replied, "Hell yeah, let's bounce." She grabbed my arm and held on tight as we headed down to the lobby. In the packed elevator, she leaned into me and I looked down at her. She grinned and said, "I love you." I said back in a casual tone, "Love you too." "Ah, I love you too, babe," Debbie giggled. I agree. One of our tenants, a senior partner at a law firm, asked John why we don't have a bed. "Hey Irving, that's where we're headed now." John replied, if my wife was as attractive as yours, I wouldn't let her go this far away from me. Irving chimed in, if I were as smart as you lawyers, I'd have a high bed in my office like you. We were all Boy Scouts, remember? Be prepared. John laughed and said, I know if my wife looked like Debbie and worked with me all day, that bed would get a lot of use. Debbie laughed and said, I never thought of that before. She added, you don't say that to me every day. You always say, wait until we get home, then you can play with Dolly. But babe, you're worth the wait. The elevator door opened, and we rushed to pick up Dolly from daycare and put her in the car. Deb asked, aren't you going to ask if I fired Jeff? I replied, why don't you just fire him? I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're right. Will you tell me why he had to go? I'll let you know if I think it's necessary. I guess I understand. So, one of our employees wanted to chat with me in his office. He told me that Jeff was going around saying that he and I were gonna hook up in the next 3 days. He thought Jeff's talk was out of line, even if it wasn't true. He just thought I should be aware of it. I thanked him and asked if he actually believed it. He said no, but still thought I should know. Anyway, have a good one, buddy. Let's give him a promotion when we can. By the way, did you know anything about this? Did you fire him before or after this all went down? So, about 30 minutes ago, I found out it was a test to see if I would fire him. I was thinking about it and realized you wouldn't do it unless you had a good reason. And that's why they didn't tell me. I'm bummed that you didn't trust me completely. If the roles were reversed, would you test me? Debbie laughed and said we're both learning to trust each other. You gotta learn to trust again when it's been broken. I said, well babe, I guess I have to. Okay, I gotta confess, letting go of Jeff really got to me for some reason. I always had this weird feeling like I knew him from somewhere, but it wasn't enough to stop me from doing what you asked. I don't feel guilty. So, what do you want to eat for dinner tonight? I texted you back about 30 minutes later. When the doorbell rang, I hurried to answer it. As soon as I opened the door, there was a huge gun pointed right at me. I took a step back and the guy holding the gun told me to freeze or he'd blow my brains out. I froze. I realized I knew the guy with the gun. It was. Hey Jeff, I got myself together. Good evening, Mr. Petrino. What do you need? Deb told Jeff to drop the gun so they could talk before things escalated. Get out so I can see you. Where's my daughter? Jeff asked. Your daughter? Yes, Dolly is our daughter, yours and mine, Debbie. She should be raised by us, her mother and father, not a stranger, Jeff insisted. But Deb corrected him, saying, you're mistaken, Jeff. John is Dolly's father. We've been together for 4 years, but couldn't marry until he got a divorce. How do you think you know me? So, you used to work at the downtown Carter Brothers department store in Ocala. I worked there too. You were the manager of the ladies' shoe department, right? Sorry, Jeff, I had never worked in Ocala before. I started working for John, first as a secretary at a Gainesville auto dealership. Sorry, but you've got the wrong girl. How well did you know this girl? Did you date her for a long time? Well, I didn't know her very well. I saw her frequently, but we didn't actually meet until a business Christmas party. As he was talking to Debbie, I saw the gun dropping lower and lower. He was totally focused on her, so I took the opportunity to smack him on the side of the head as hard as I could. He went down like a ton of bricks. I grabbed the gun as soon as it hit the floor, and Debbie wasted no time jumping on him and kicking him right in the nuts. That jerk deserved it for trying to assault me. She kept kicking him in the head and face, screaming and cursing, until a deputy sheriff grabbed her and held her back. Suddenly, a bunch of deputies showed up in my apartment. After things calmed down and Jeff got arrested, we found out that the pizza guy witnessed Jeff aiming a gun at us and quickly called the cops on his phone. We checked on Darlie and found her fast asleep in bed. I paid for the pizza and gave the delivery guy a $50 tip. We had to give statements about what went down. The deputy brought in his laptop to look up info on Deb's assault case and said Jeff would be charged for that too, along with assault with a deadly weapon. Someone broke into our house and probably committed other crimes after the cops left. We reheated some food and had a small dinner, but neither of us were really hungry, so we just sat and cuddled. She looked at me and said she didn't remember seeing him before he started working for us. I think you must have subconsciously recognized him, but your mind blocked it out to protect you from the trauma of the attack. It's possible that you were drugged at the time and it felt like a nightmare rather than reality, or maybe you just didn't get a good look at him. Did you get a good look at his face since it was dark or he was covering your eyes? Deb looked up at me and said, I really hope they lock him away for a long time. Wow, you really decked him. How's your hand? I said it hurt a bit, but it'll be okay in the morning. Deb said, let me see it. I showed her and she said, look, it's completely puffed up. We need to put some ice on it. When she came back with a bowl and some ice, I said, honey, you were pretty slick in confusing him about who you are. He wasn't sure what to believe, so I thought I'd distract him enough for you too. Girl, you gotta show him who's boss or make him realize he's with the wrong girl. You were right, he picked the wrong one. I'm so happy you're wearing ballet slippers instead of those killer stilettos you wear to work. You would have totally killed him. No one threatens my men or my baby and walks away without a reminder of who I am. She grabbed my hand, looked at it, dried it carefully, and kissed it. She trembled, almost losing it. She denied it, but tears were streaming down her face as she shook uncontrollably. I pulled her close, hugged her tight until she calmed down. I told her to get ready for bed while I locked up. We cuddled and chatted for a bit. I promised her that we would both get concealed weapon permits. Then I asked her to call a nearby Marshall weapon store to see if they had any recommendations for us to carry until we got our permits. I was worried about her safety since she's so small and cute. She mentioned she grew up near Melrose. Then we went to bed. We cuddled and snuggled until we fell asleep, but then my hand started hurting. I got up and wrapped it in an ace bandage, but before I could finish, a little pair of hands took over. Sweetie, you don't have to do everything on your own. Let me help, she said. She wrapped my hand gently but securely, and it really made a difference. I could finally sleep without being woken up by the pain. I thanked her a lot for helping me out, and she just smiled. John, honey, you gotta learn to let me lend a hand sometimes. You keep waking me up every time you bump your hand and groan. I love doing things for you, so let me help. My hand was a bit messed up, but since I use touch screens for most things, it didn't slow me down much. My lovely wife checked on me every half hour and rewrapped my hand. She said we both have a concealed weapons course at a local gun shop at 4 p.m. For the past 5 days, I've been asking her if she's ever fired a gun. She said yes, Uncle Bill taught her how to shoot revolvers and automatic pistols. She shot rifles and shotguns, but mostly pistols like .22, .38, S9, Miss, and .45 SEC. She's even shot a .44 Magnum before, but she's not very good at it because it's too heavy for her to hold for long. She takes her shots quickly. I do admire the power it has though. I might have to get some tips from you, Bull John. I saw that picture of you as a Marine, you were so cute with a chest full of medals. So, I was checking out your den desk for an envelope and stumbled upon your marksmanship for rifle and pistol stuff. I swear I wasn't snooping, just looking around. I mean, there's nothing in this house I can't see, right? This is our home, and I have no secrets from you. I really hope you don't find anything incriminating. Now, I'll have to search every nook and cranny. Feel free to look all you want. She gave me a knowing smile and said, baby, I know you. You're a terrible liar. You can't even look me in the eye when you're lying, joking, or teasing. Man, I love that. I adore you with all my heart. After getting ready for work in the morning, I took Debbie to see my dad. I showed her my secret gun stash hidden behind a fake wall in the closet. There were like 20 guns in there, all loaded up. I told her to pick one to take to our class later that day. Debbie surprised me by choosing an old Ivory Johnson 9-shot revolver with a 2-inch barrel. She smiled and said, Uncle Bill had one of these, I loved it. Then something else caught her eye. Hey, check it out, she pulled out a Walther PPK automatic in .380 caliber. She pulled back the slide to check if it was loaded, then looked at me and asked if she could try it. Uncle Bill used to own one of these in .32 caliber. What do you think about .380? I personally prefer it over the .32, they're pretty much the same except for the cartridge. I think it's more important to have a gun that you like and feel comfortable with rather than focusing on the power of the cartridge. My dad, for example, used to have an old master pistol and he always said, "Shootin' that dude in the left eye didn't matter if it's a 2, 4, or 5-pointer, he still croaked." A missed shot from a cannon wouldn't even scratch him back in the early 50s when he was the sheriff of Belleville, Texas. He always packed heat, just like old Johnson there, even when he was off duty. He had his reasons for leaking it though, said it was lightweight, didn't weigh him down with extra ammo, and didn't break the bank to practice with. Hell, he even claimed you could shoot the pistol round a corner with your nose up. Okay, so like if you're gonna hold it against your hand and not worry about getting hit in the nose from the kickback or the gun breaking, there's a few things to think about. Like, I totally get that accuracy is key. If you punch someone in the face, it's gonna do more than just make a loud noise. We left work early and stopped by Grandma's house, then headed to the martial arts center where we met the owner. We told him about our day and how we had Dolly, this cute little kid who gets into everything. I was looking for some kind of self-defense stuff that would work with having young kids around. Guns are out of the question, so we checked out this thing called a self-defense baton. It's basically a harmless-looking gadget that looks like a small flashlight, but with a quick flick of the wrist, it extends to 21 inches long. The guy who sold it to us also offered a 1-hour class on how to use it, with a hands-on demo included. We bought 2 and set up the session for next week. So we hit up the gun shop and the dude there was like, "Don't even worry, you'll ace those tests no problem." So we went to the range and tried out both rifles. She was all about the PBKS, and after just 30 minutes, she was hitting every shot in the bullseye from 10 and 15 yards away. We grabbed her a holster for the Walther, and she found these cute purses with built-in holsters that fit the PBK perfectly in black, white, and brown. I went with my Smith & Wesson. So, I got this .40 caliber Wesson military and police automatic. I already had a shoulder and belt holster, but I bought a fanny pack holster that I really liked. We grabbed some study materials for our concealed weapons training, then went back to get Dolly. We had to show Granny and Uncle Bill what we bought. Bill was into the batons and mentioned he keeps something similar in his car for self-defense. He even showed me a 3/8-inch steel rebar with a little nut and 2 bigger nuts on the other end. In between the nuts, there was a rusty piece of steel sandwiched between 2. Everything was covered in a bit of rust, even the washers. He was grinning, saying it was way cheaper than the fancy stuff you bought. If I use it to defend myself and accidentally hurt someone, I can just say it's not a weapon, just something I found on the street for protection. I tried using it with a threaded rod, but it bent too easily. I looked at it and figured it must have fallen off a truck or trailer. Damn good idea. After what happened with Jeff, I had our security team set up disguise and night vision TVs around the clock. So, we got cameras at the front and back doors and also in the garage. The screens were by each door and on the main console. I made Debbie hit up the shooting range 3 more times. The owner said Deb was already a pro shooter, but I told him I had something else to show her. Once we were all set up at the range, I told her to stick the PPK in her purse and sling it over her right shoulder. Then, I put her on the firing line and set the target about 10 yards down. I encouraged her to grab the gun and aim at the target. She started pulling out the gun from her purse and I yelled, "Don't shoot through the purse, just point and shoot." She listened, but she couldn't hit the target. I made her take out the revolver from her purse and forced her to shoot, holding the gun down by her hip where the purse would be. It took her 3 tries, but after going through 3 boxes of ammo, she finally hit the target. She was even able to hit it while holding the gun in a plastic grocery bag by her side. She had mastered the skill of point shooting, hitting the target from either side. I turned her back to face the target and she still hit it. Most of the time I aimed at the target. When I went to get the gun from the owner, it was in her purse. I put her in position on the firing line with the target 5 yards away. I turned her so she was facing to the left of the target. I told her to shoot rapidly and as much as she wanted. She fired 6 shots in 2 groups with less than a second between each shot. I patted her on the back and turned the target light back on. "Wow," exclaimed the owner, seeing all 6 shots hitting the target's kill zone. She looked at me with a mix of emotions and pointed at her purse. The dress got messed up, so I messed it up even more. I took out the fancy lining on one side of the dress and put all your stuff on the nice side. You gotta buy some similar purses and switch them out if you're all dolled up in a fancy dress and carrying a small clutch or something. You better stay close to me for safety. She smiled at me and said, I always look to you for protection, you're my hero. The store owner asked, can you shoot well? Debbie looked at him as he put that .40 in a plastic bag and did a good job. Never challenge him to a game of darts or pool from double the distance, he's just too good. She grinned at me and said there's other stuff he can do that I can't even talk about, it's mind-blowing. I blushed when he looked at me and chuckled, that's some serious skill right there. The way she looked at me made me believe her. We both aced the written test and got our permits weeks later in the mail. We hit up the shooting range about once a week for a few months before cutting back. My wife is a total boss when it comes to shooting. She can hit a target nearly 10 yards away, and if she takes her time and aims at 25 yards, she's getting 80% of her shots in the bullseye. The rest land in the outer rings, but she's consistently scoring in the high 200s. Meanwhile, I can barely keep up with her. I think she's purposely missing shots now just to avoid embarrassing me when we compete. So, we were at the gun store, and she just had to stop and shoot off a few rounds. She still has that original purse I used to teach her how to point shoot from the trunk of our caddy. The front end of the purse has been chopped off now. The owner cleared the range for her, and she strutted up to the firing line in a cute sundress, big sun hat, high heels, and a purse slung over her shoulder. She had her hand in the purse, ready to fire off 6 shots in 3 sets of 2 in just a second and a half. And then she'd just casually put the gun away, reload and put in a new clip at the shooting range. The range master brought in the old target and then quickly moved on to new targets in the lanes on both sides of her. The targets were getting closer to her. The range master said, honey, you have targets on both sides. I want you to hit the target on the right first, then the one on the left, followed by the one on the right for 6 rounds. Start with the targets facing you for 4 seconds before they turn around, got it? Debbie smiled and nodded. There was a click when the targets flipped around. She pulled out her gun and fired off 6 shots, twisting it around before the targets disappeared. She quickly changed the clips, remembering never to leave her gun unusable for too long, that's when a skilled enemy will attack. I love how my wife follows all my advice on these things. After we both shot off a few rounds, we went about our business. I knew we were the only ones he had cleared the way for. Man, he did it for a bunch of reasons. He and the other dudes loved watching Debbie shoot and just seeing her walk by. We never stayed for too long. The range guy told us about a website that sells all kinds of ladies' holsters and purses for any situation. We bought a bunch, including a little gold clutch purse that could only hold the gun if Debbie held the back of the purse with her right thumb and fingers. The gun would pop out of the purse and slap back into her hand, ready to fire. Debbie is a badass chick. Viewers, she usually rocks high heels, short skirts, and sexy outfits. I ain't worried about other guys checking her out, it's entertaining for me too. One afternoon, Debbie came into my office, shut the door, smiled, pushed my chair back, and sat on my lap. She kissed me and said, honey, I've looked into everything. We're good to go in every way. The coast is clear. I've stopped taking the pill and want to go on a week-long vacation wherever you want, babe. Let's go, Mama and Uncle. Bill's gonna keep Dolly, she's really settled in with them now. All right, Mrs. Dynamo, get everything sorted out. I'm thinking tropical beaches, fishing, and more. Get us packed and tell me when we're leaving. So, lover, we're leaving on Friday, 2 days from now, from Gainesville. We're taking Delta Airlines for a week at a clothing-optional adult resort on Grand Cayman Island. We'll be back in a week. I couldn't stop grinning, it's gonna be great. How much will this cost? Less than a week's wages, everything included. I think we're all packed and ready, sure was easy. I don't need to bring a bunch of clothes, just a small bag for my makeup should be enough. Debbie laughed and said, oh honey, clothing is optional. I'm not sure about that though. They said the clothing optional area at the resort is only in one section, with its own beach, snack bar, and pool. I packed 2 big suitcases and 2 carry-ons for our vacation, and it was great. We only checked out the clothing optional part once, and it was a disaster. So, we were chilling at this secluded part of the beach, just hanging out and enjoying the water. We laid out on our towels to catch some rays and ended up dozing off. When we woke up, there were these guys watching us. One of them came up to Deb and straight up asked her if she wanted to be in a porn movie for a fat paycheck. He had this naked dude with him who was pretty good looking and he was giving Deb the eyes. The guy said he could hook her up with a big salary for a whole year. I had to remind them that my wife is already a big shot CEO making bank. Dude, you gotta make 99 grand a week working for Doll Corporation and then sign a 5-year contract. After that, you gotta convince me to let her do it. He looked at her, then at me and said, "You're joking, right?" "I'm serious, man. With all the bonuses, she makes almost double the amount." The party was getting wild, so Deb put on her bikini, grabbed her towel, and said, "Let's go, babe." I got up, put on my swim trunks, gathered our stuff, and we headed to the beach. The corn guy tagged along behind us. "Wait, is she really the CEO?" "She's the CEO of the biggest architecture firm in Florida," he exclaimed. "Gotcha. Now my partners and I are getting a studio set up at that big firm in Florida." "I know the name, who is she working for?" "She's working with Nelson Architects." "Holy crap, that's the right name." When we were safe in our suite, she pulled me close and asked, "Can I please you, Daddy?" "Can I?" I giggled. "Honey, you can watch." I grabbed her and held her at arm's length. Damn, she was beautiful. "I'm so turned on by you, John, please make love." "Come on, babe, just stay with me, okay? I don't want to be someone's wife, I just want to be your girl. I'll do anything for you, but only for you. But if you take his offer, you'll be able to have a bunch of guys at once. That sounds like a blast, right? All you have to do is sign this paper to start." "Wait, what's this?" "It's our divorce agreement." "But I couldn't go through with it." "Would you really kick me out?" "Seriously, do you think you would?" "I think it would destroy you. I know you didn't want me to do that, but I think you would have liked it." I dragged her onto the bed. "Do you want me to go find the body of the corn guy for you?" "Wait, I don't think that's what you said about me." "But now you're okay with me, right?" "No, I've never just put up with you, I actually admire him. He's perfect. Maybe a little bigger would be even better. You could try out for the corn guy, he might ask the hot guy who was with him on the beach to test you out." Oh my God, I saw him and I couldn't believe he was real. I've never seen someone like that before, not even in pictures. "Hey, which porn lawyer should I hit up to send us the divorce papers? I never signed that shit and I ain't ever gonna mess with another dude or let one touch me." "I think you just want a gig in the adult industry, don't ya? Don't be mad, he saw me naked and got all excited but didn't even offer me a job. It's not your fault you're average down there, but not impressive." She laughed, trying to be sneaky. I just walked out, knowing she was joking but what she said still stung. There was something fishy going on, so I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. I was just wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so I strolled down the path without any real destination in mind. After a while, I looked up and realized I was standing in front of a resort I didn't recognize. Feeling a bit uneasy, I turned around and saw something familiar, so I hurried back in that direction. As I was walking, I saw a couple approaching from a distance. The woman looked a lot like Debbie. I quickly sat down on a bench by the door of our suite, hidden in the shadows, but still able to see them. Debbie then said, "Thank you for walking me to my room, I'm pretty sure John is here or will be soon." I had no clue that teasing him about his size would upset him so much. "I don't think he's small unless you compare him to the guy who was with you earlier today. I know John is perfect for me. I just found out that the dude is the cocky type," he said. "Hey, every man looks tiny next to me. I hope you didn't tease him too much about that, it's the worst thing you can make fun of most guys about. If you're not careful, it can really hit a nerve. Messing with a guy, he might be fine with being with other women, but with you it's like a blow to his ego that's hard to fix." They stopped on the other side of the wall for me. "Another thing I've seen is that if a woman compares him to a big guy, he might feel like he can't measure up to big dudes and think only a big guy can really satisfy you. That can really crush a guy. Look, I appreciate your help, but I gotta go find JN. Good night." Her heels clacked on the sidewalk as she walked away. I walked around the corner and she saw me, smiled, and ran into my arms. I kissed her deeply and brought her back to our room. She looked at me carefully and asked, "Are you okay, honey?" I quickly started taking off my clothes, not wearing much so I was exposed in front of her. She looked concerned and tears started flowing from her eyes. She stared into my eyes and asked, "What's wrong? Why aren't you getting excited?" I reassured her that I didn't need to impress her right now. Her beautiful face scrunched up as she cried, sobbing while trying to talk. I had to have a chat with her and let her know that I found out what the Cornell guy said about me. Her eyes were still teary when she asked if I was okay. I promised to do my best despite my equipment limitations. We never saw that guy from Cornell again. The rest of our honeymoon and vacation was chill and drama-free. We were getting it on at least 3 times a day, sometimes even more. We didn't want to leave Grand Cayman, but we were excited to get back home. We really missed Dolly and called her every day. The drive from the airport. It felt like it was taking forever. Dolly was peeping at us from a window 'cause she got out of the car before we did. She yelled, "Mommy, Daddy, I miss you." I just stood there watching the little kid hug and kiss her mom. They were both crying and sobbing, and I couldn't help but cry too. But I didn't want to interrupt their emotional moment. I was on a mission to get some gifts. Deb and I had gone to pick up Debbie's mom and uncle. Then I heard Dolly scream, "Where's Daddy? Where's my daddy? I want my papa." That's when I snuck up behind her and gave her a big hug. I gave her a big hug without squishing her too hard, and Dolly started crying while hugging and kissing me. Debbie hugged and kissed us both. Deb's mom and uncle were standing there watching us. Eventually we all calmed down and went inside the house. They told us that Dolly had been really good while we were gone and could stay with them whenever she wanted. Dolly said she had a blast with them, but begged us not to leave her for so long again. Debbie and I promised each other that we wouldn't do it again. We've been back at work for a while now after our vacation. About a month before we left, Deb posted up notices looking for a new graduate engineer to check out job sites, deal with problems, and make sure everything goes according to plan. The job would involve a lot of travel. She got over 100 applications with resumes and references attached. Deb put together a team and came up with some rules and criteria for judging the applications. Her and the senior engineers are gonna look through the top 20 candidates. All they have to go on for each one is their info. We just had numbers assigned to us, no names, genders, relationships, ages, or photos. We know that some of those hidden details could affect their job performance, like a hot young woman might not be the best fit for a traveling role. We narrowed it down to the top 20 candidates, and 4 of us on the committee checked out their files with all the info like names, ages, and interests. So, each committee member got handed 5 files and had to give them a rating and pick out the top 5. Then, I'd look at all 10 and pick out the top 4. Everyone else did the same. We'd put all the ratings together, average them out, and see what we came up with. We thought that all of this would give us a decent number of candidates for interviews. I would handle any problems and have the final say. Debbie had a big influence on my decisions, which was important. Most of the time, I just went with her gut feeling. It was between 2 people. The first one was this gorgeous young woman with a master's in engineering. She was engaged and working as an assistant professor at Georgia Tech. She said she was cool with traveling, no problem. The second one was Jamal Washington, a tall, fit dude with top-notch academics and stellar recommendations from past bosses. He had some solid experience working for some pretty decent small companies. He was a total catch, good-looking, smooth talker, charming, and oozing confidence. He loved to travel and was single. His resume was top-notch. It was a hard choice, but I told Deb she could decide. Debbie ended up cheating and hiring both of them. Betty Johnson got the job as the assistant to our engineering department's chief. Marty Martin, who was way past retirement age, was a fantastic guy. Deb saw him as a possible replacement. Betty was thrilled with that and hired Jamal Washington. The guy we hired was really great for us. I saw him a lot, but I knew he worked with Betty all the time. Marty thought Betty was really nice and super talented as an engineer, especially with computers and CAD tools. She even taught me some new tricks I had never seen before. She installed some programs that made our current ones way easier to use. That young gal really knew her stuff. Deb and I both really liked Betty and her fiancé, so we had them over for barbecues and pool parties. Debbie had us sit down at the kitchen table a couple of months after we got back from our honeymoon. She was holding our hands and looked pretty serious. She turned to me and said, "John, I told you I had a doctor's appointment this afternoon for a checkup, but I actually have something else to tell her. I've been feeling really anxious lately, like maybe I have cancer or something." I squeezed her hand, worried. She looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" I shook my head, scared. Debbie laughed and reassured us, "No, it's nothing that serious, no need to worry. Just wanted to tell you that we're gonna have a new addition to the family in a few months." Dolly was so excited, she shouted, "Goody, we're getting a puppy." Debbie smiled and said, "No, honey, not quite. You're gonna have a younger sister or brother." I was shocked and must have had a huge grin on my face. Deb chuckled and said, "I hope that smile means you're happier than Dolly." I jumped up, started running around Deb, and grabbed Dolly, yelling, "Mom's gonna have a baby. Mom's gonna have a baby. Hooray, Mama's gonna have a baby." As I danced around with Dolly, she joined in the celebration. After finding out her mom was pregnant, she screamed just as loud as I did. Deb sat down and laughed with us. Dolly and I moved closer to Debbie. Dolly climbed into her lap and gave her a kiss, then I kissed her too. My eyes welled up with tears, so I stepped back and looked out the window. I saw nothing, lost in thought about what this all meant to me. I was going to be a dad, and this child would be a part of me, carrying on my blood to future generations. I think every dad goes through these emotions and understands what it means to be a father. Giving birth is risky for the woman I love, but taking care of this new baby is my responsibility. I already have 2 daughters to look after and protect. I hugged and kissed Dolly, telling her how much I wanted to hug and kiss her mother. Deb came into my arms and we kissed for a long time. It wasn't a romantic kiss, but one filled with love and admiration. I told my wife I love her and thanked John for this wonderful gift. "I adore you too, thank you to my husband. This baby will be a mix of both of us, a fusion of our love." I prayed for this. My best friend Dolly looked at Debbie and said, "Mommy, I'm happy I'm gonna have a brother or sister. But next time, can we get a puppy?" I put my hand on Debbie's stomach, which was still flat. She giggled and said, "No, sweetie, I'm not showing yet. I'm over 2 months pregnant. I still have a few months to go." She asked me to join her for birthing classes, and of course, I said yes. I would go anywhere with her. I don't really need to go, but I think it would be beneficial. I totally get that I have no idea what's gonna happen in this whole process. I mean, I kinda know the basics, but I really wanna know more. We still have like 7 months to figure it out, right? I was just looking at that young girl in front of me and wondering where she's gonna put the baby. I'm way bigger than Jeff, so I'm thinking, can his tiny wife even handle carrying a bigger baby? And what if it's twins or triplets? Man, I'm so surprised and got so much to consider. Why didn't I think about all this before? Think about this before knocking her up and putting her health at risk. What's up, babe? You seem worried about something. I pulled her close and gave her a hug. I saw that Dolly wasn't listening, so I shared my concerns with Debbie. She reassured me, "Don't worry, babe. God made women's bodies to handle having a baby, and if there are any issues, modern medicine can help. That's why I'm here. During my pregnancy, my doctor will keep an eye on how big our baby is getting, check me out, and make sure my body can handle giving birth. If my birth canal isn't big enough, there are some options to induce labor early so the baby doesn't get too big. Another option is to have a C-section, where they surgically take the baby out of the stomach. It's a common procedure done all the time without any problems. But I'm worried, Dolly." "Daddy, why are you crying? What's going on, Mom?" "Dad is acting like a dummy because he doesn't know how babies come out of Mom's belly. He's worried it will hurt Mom, which is silly. Mom already explained everything to me. It might hurt a bit, but moms don't mind because they love their babies." Deb smiled and nodded, like saying, "See, no need to worry. Even Dolly knows how much Dad loves us, he always tries to keep us safe. It's a good kind of hurt." Dolly looked at me and then at Deb. "He's a great dad." "Dad, isn't he amazing?" "Yes, sweetie, he definitely is." We all hugged after a few months and I noticed a little bump in Debbie's belly. I guess she was thrilled about it. She insisted that this pregnancy was way better than the last one. But then she had to go through it alone and was scared. This time she had a wonderful husband to take care of her every need, and she was even happier than usual. I wasn't sure if she had the usual morning sickness, but everyone was talking about how radiant she looked. She had trouble finishing her work because everyone was too busy complimenting her. The people in the building were all so worried about her that they wouldn't let her lift a finger or open a door. They all rushed to help her with anything she needed. Everyone would stop her and ask how she was doing. She told me that, as irritating as it was, she knew it was because they genuinely cared about her. She said it was a stark contrast to the last time when people ignored her because she was a single mother-to-be. Debbie told me she even bought a fake ring to avoid judgmental looks, but she eventually threw it away because she felt it was fake. So, she legit thought she didn't do anything bad and that her baby wouldn't either. And she didn't care what uneducated people thought. She was all about hugging and kissing me, constantly wanting physical contact. It was pretty cool, no matter where we were or what we were doing. She just couldn't keep her hands off me, and I was totally into it. Debbie was already 7 months pregnant when we decided to leave work early and hit up the farmer's market for some stuff. Hey, we need to grab some veggies for the company picnic this weekend. She said she's gonna run to the bank across the street to get some cash, 'cause the market only takes cash. Dolly and I were supposed to pick her up from the bank. I was putting Dolly in her car seat when I heard a gunshot from across the street. Without even thinking, I grabbed my gun as I shut the door and looked over. Debbie was just standing there on the sidewalk, calmly shooting back at 3 guys trying to get into a car. And then the car suddenly lurched towards Debbie. I saw 2 guys hit the ground, so I quickly snapped 4 pics before the driver took off. Then I lost sight of Debbie as the car slowed down, hit the curb, and crashed into a tree. I ran across the street and found Debbie lying in the grass next to the car, trying to get up. I checked on her and helped her stand up. She said she was fine, just tripped trying to dodge the car. There was still screaming coming from the bank, so I headed over there. More shots were fired from the bank, so I stopped to look around. As I turned the corner and looked through the glass doors, I saw a crazy scene. One of the doors was smashed and glass was all over the sidewalk. There was a bank guard lying on the ground in a pool of blood, but he was still clutching his gun and aiming it at a man who was holding a woman hostage. I wished things could have been simpler, like if Johnson had handed me 2 guns instead of 1. But he didn't, so I maneuvered to get a good shot and took down the robber with a bullet to the head. He dropped his gun and fell to the ground. I quickly checked on the woman to make sure she was all right, when suddenly someone shouted, "There's another one. There was this guy sneaking up behind you." I spun around and ended up on the floor. I heard 2 quick gunshots behind me and this dude popped out from behind a desk holding a gun. Then there were 2 more shots and he stumbled. I shot him 2 more times in the chest and took him out. Debbie spun me around and asked if I was all right. I asked her the same and she was like, "Hell no, I ruined my new pair of pantyhose and a nice purse." I checked us both out and didn't see anything else wrong. The cops showed up and Debbie and I handed over our guns. The bank manager came over and told us. So, the cops said we totally saved a bunch of lives. 6 customers got shot but only 1 died. And we straight up murdered 5 robbers. The cop in charge let me and Debbie bounce so we could take care of Dolly. The whole thing freaked her out, so I sent Debbie and Dolly back to our spot while things got sorted. I got grilled before they let me stay with Dolly, while Debbie got questioned in a different room. "Debbie, you remember our security, right? Man, those cameras really got everything that went down across the street." Turns out, the photos got the whole thing from start to finish, just like the bank's inside and outside recordings. The detectives got a great view of everything that went down. Finally, I got to take my family home and try to relax. I had to stay cool while scolding my wife for getting into a shootout with the criminal. I told her she put herself and our unborn kid in danger. Man, the TV just showed this crazy story about this awesome couple who saved a bunch of people and stopped a bank robbery. Debbie was cracking up at how ridiculous we looked trying to dodge the car and not get shot. But then she started crying when she realized how intense it was. I tried to comfort her, but we both ended up crying and comforting each other while watching it all unfold on the news. We flipped through different channels and were totally shocked by what we saw. Yo, so All those news crews were outside our place covering the bank robbery we saw. Then the phone started blowing up, and it was some Fox News reporter wanting an interview. I told him we couldn't talk till the cops finished their investigation. Then our phone was ringing off the hook with people congratulating us. Later on, the sheriff and his deputies showed up at our place with all the footage from the scene. So, there were cameras watching and they caught Debbie leaving the bank just as the burglars were leaving too. Debbie quickly reached into her purse and bam. Flames shot out and she took down 2 of the robbers. The third guy got knocked down. All 3 of them started shooting at Debbie, but she was dodging bullets left and right. The other robbers tried to run, but Debbie got one of them with her next shots. So, they were pushing them to fall back, and that's when I showed up with my gun. The getaway car pulled up, and I looked super chill as I shot the driver, who ended up croaking. Debbie was just casually reloading, and shots were still coming from the bank. She kept holding onto the pistol. The security camera footage from inside the bank backed up my story about the hostages. Another bank robber was found hidden bad behind a desk, but was gonna make it. They asked us if we wanted to be on the news. So, there was this conference at the sheriff's office that afternoon. They said all the news outlets would be there. After that, we could do interviews if we wanted. Debbie's story blew everyone away, even the sheriff. He couldn't believe that a gorgeous, sweet-looking pregnant lady could take down a group of bank robbers and come out on top. I told the sheriff that my wife was the most incredible woman I've ever known. I said, if you want something done right, call my wife. His smile disappeared when he realized she actually would do it. You gotta always come out on top, he said. I'm against regular folks getting into shootouts, it's dangerous for everyone. But this little lady nailed it, didn't miss a single shot even with bullets flying by her. Not many trained cops can do that. Can't believe she fired off 7 shots, reloaded, and fired 7 more, all hitting their mark. Looking at me, he said, you did pretty good too, not shooting as much but still. Don't miss out on practice, gotta do it all the time. We all shoot once a month, 24 rounds each. Wow, that's not a lot. Deb's a natural, don't underestimate her in darts or any hand-eye coordination games. And you say she's a mom, she can't be that old. Actually, she'll be old enough to drink soon. The next few months were tough for us, everyone wanted Debbie for interviews and new shows. Even her brother wanted her to endorse everything from hair products to diapers. I had to get tough and put some restrictions on her as her due date got closer. Deb had trouble saying no to appearing on shows, so I had to be the bad guy and say no for her. I made sure she didn't schedule anything for a week before or 3 weeks after her due date. I even went as far as cutting off her contact with everyone except her family. I wouldn't even let her answer the phone. Her close friends and family had to call my cell phone instead. She was determined to go to. She kept going to work until she went into labor, sticking to her daily routine. I had her tweak it a bit so that the department heads could pop in to see her. Jamal Washington was always the first on her schedule in the mornings. He liked getting his orders straight from her. Debbie and I took a couple of weeks off after our son was born. I wanted to be hands-on with taking care of him right from the start, bathing him, changing him, burping him, and holding him as much as possible. When we went back to work, we kept his little crib with us in Deb's office. Deb brought baby John Jr. to the office so she could take care of him. He was such a chill baby, hardly ever cried and just loved everyone. He would smile and giggle at anyone who paid attention to him. I would peek through Deb's office door and see her breastfeeding him. One morning, I was running late dropping Dolly off at daycare because Deb was working, so I accidentally walked into her office instead of mine. She was feeding Johnny with a little towel covering him up, but she was kinda exposed while talking on the phone. I was on the phone with Jamal when I noticed Washington staring at her from just 3 feet away. I stopped, covered her drink, and kept walking. When I looked back, Washington was smiling at me, which annoyed me. The next week, she told me she was going to make her office visits and would be back soon. She said if Johnny gets hungry, to call her. I asked why she doesn't just let them visit her instead. It would be a lot easier for her. She just grinned and said she'd do it tomorrow, mentioning that she liked to check out how things looked in each office. I asked her who she was talking about. So, I noticed she said she always talks to Jamal before he goes out for his rounds. I looked at her all confused and asked why he doesn't talk to his boss Marty or Betty. She just stared back at me and said she didn't know, that's just how they've always done it since he got here. I don't like it, he should be getting his orders from his boss, not her. She glanced at me and said, well, while you were busy with Johnny, what does it matter? Has he finished his probation period yet? I just turned away and pretended to read some notes on my desk. She didn't say anything. I looked back at her and raised my eyebrow. I'll handle it, no worries. It's better if he's in the right chain of command so people won't question why he's different. She stared at me, including you. Yeah, John, are you serious? He's a big, good-looking guy, like the one you were so into in the Cayman. She stared at me. I grinned and winked at her. She smiled and flipped me off. Several months later, we had our annual early summer business beach party. I owned a lot of oceanfront acres. We had a spot about 12 miles north of Daytona Beach, all fenced in and gated with some lime rock and a parking lot. We set up a bunch of canopies for shade, had a generator running on gas to keep the fridge cold and provide some light and tunes. Eventually, we moved the generator further away and connected it to the canopies with an underground wire. Our kids got to crash at Grandma's place cause the shindig was adults only. A few random folks from the beach ended up wandering in, and Deb was all over the place. Spent time hanging out with different groups to make things easier. All the food was already cooked, just needed to be warmed up a bit. Had rented 2 porta potties. By the evening, I noticed Jamal was always with Deb, they were hardly ever alone together. She seemed to be avoiding me and it was starting to piss me off. Betty Johnson helped out a ton with the cooking. Her partner was out of town and she didn't really want to come, but her co-workers convinced her to. Betty could tell I was getting annoyed. I told Betty I was gonna walk up the beach and by then, the crowd had thinned out. I had to think about Debbie, she seemed totally into Jamal. I knew I'd be screwed if she left me. Would she take the kids with her? Should I just bounce and let her move him in? I couldn't do it. What would happen to Dolly? What was my problem that I couldn't keep a marriage going? I found a driftwood log and sat on the sand, leaning against it. I watched the small waves. As I was walking on the beach, the waves were slowly getting closer to my feet. I suddenly realized my feet were getting wet as I was lost in my thoughts and crying. I heard someone coming and saw 2 people shining flashlights on the beach. The light hit me and they came closer, shining the light in my face. I couldn't see who it was, but I recognized the voice. It was Debbie. She told me to wait there until the water covered me. I refused to look at her because that would not be okay. I refused to do what she asked. Just let it happen, I need my husband. We need to talk. Come back with me and we'll wrap things up and go home. Betty and Jamal will help us out. I looked around and saw Betty standing about 20 feet away, watching us. Debbie said Betty told her she saw you heading this way and you were upset about Jamal and me. I thought you knew me better than that. I love you, my handsome husband. I'm really sorry if you thought there was something going on between Jamal and me. That's not possible, you are a part of me. I've just been trying to help. He's going through a tough time because he's in love and his heart is shattered because the person he loves is in love with someone else. Jamal and I are really good friends, nothing more. There's no romantic spark between us. I told her straight up that I wouldn't believe him if he wasn't into girls. How did you know that? Well, usually guys are attracted to you unless they're not into girls. So who's he in love with? You. Me. But I've never shown any interest in him. I think he knew that you always had your eye on him. Girl, I know you got it all wrong. You thought he was into me and you tried to push him away from me. But come on, you're always hanging out with him. What am I supposed to think? I still think you're into him. Just ask Betty what everyone else thinks. Is Betty with John? I've been thinking about it and there's been a lot of talk. The girls are worried about how John would feel if it turned out to be true, especially after what happened with Sally and Debbie. She put her hands on her face and cried, "No, no. What did I do to my poor husband? I thought he was just teasing me. I didn't realize he actually believed I cared about Jamal. I just wanted to cheer Jamal up about John. I get it, because I love John with all my heart and soul. He comes to my office every morning to see John, he's always around me because that's where John is. John is the most handsome man he's ever seen, I agree. I glanced at Betty and Debbie. Well, he's not bad looking. They exchanged looks and Betty giggled and said she tried to hook me up with him. Debbie was like, no way, JN only goes on dates with me. Plus, I know Jamal caught John checking me out at the last pool party, which got my husband all worked up. Jamal was clearly impressed. I just looked at the two girls, thinking, I don't care if Mr. is repressed, impressed, or depressed. I am not available in any way. I happen to be one of the hottest women around. When we got married, I made some promises to her in front of God. You know those promises are still on, and I'll never break them. Debbie looked at me and said, Betty, isn't that the cutest thing you've ever heard? The best part is, he's the worst liar in the world. When we go shopping together, I always try on outfits that I know look awful on me. I'll ask him if everything looks good, and he'll hesitate and not give a straight answer. If I push him, he'll say something like, the color suits you, or whatever. If I say I like it, he'll eventually admit he doesn't like it. John can't even look me in the eyes and lie a little bit. I wouldn't even dare to lie to him. I can joke with him without lying though. I was looking at Debbie and asked her if she sees Jamal as a problem at all. She said no, he might annoy you a bit but he's not a big issue in the grand scheme of things. I'll have him learn from Marty or Betty, which should be perfect. His work is excellent in every aspect. His reports are always on time and well done. There's nothing to complain about with him. I handle problems quickly. Do I need to watch both of you closely? Nope, she smiled. Please just keep an eye on me, I love that. Okay, tell him why we're putting him back in charge and how it'll help him. Just say he's done with probation and doesn't need more help from you to do his job well. So, he'll join the team of examiners and get paid right. Debbie smiled warmly. It's no wonder I love you so much. That's just a straightforward but smart way to keep everyone happy. I couldn't help but laugh. You're in a great mood. Will you help me feel good when we tuck the kids in tonight? Count on it, babe. It'll be my pleasure. Thanks for tuning into today's stories. If you liked what you heard, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on what went down. Take care.